I don't know what to say for the before the intro, but shout out Tyler the Creator. Don't tap the glass. We're back. It's the program hosted by General Effect Media, the gem of the performing arts. I am your co-host, Aiden Spicer, and I am unfortunately not joined by Daniel Montoya Jr. today as he is still out sick, but he is feeling better. So do not worry. We will be back to our regular scheduled, I don't know, programming soon enough. But that leaves just me today the whole time, which is kind of nerve-wracking, but you know, we're gonna get it done. I got my computer right here. I got my notes. We got a lot of stuff. I even got a presentation for y'all here shortly. But don't worry, audio listeners. I will be describing everything you want. Like if you're a regular audio listener, like it's all good. The presentation's just for general effect to what I was gonna say, if you know what I'm saying. Let's just go and jump in. I'm gonna go straight into DCI San Antonio. And real quick, just a reminder, like I am probably going to get some stuff wrong because this whole script and research was done by me, and I'm still new to this. So we'll figure that out as we go, but just, keep that in mind. DCI San Antonio, DCI Southwestern, whatever you want to call it, we saw lots of new endings for the drum course, and I liked all of them. I can tell that most of them have more to come. And there's a couple that I really hope that there's more to come. But at the end of the day, I respect them all. But besides that, we got to address the elephant in the room, which is, man, how about them Boston Crusaders? So, I believe this is Boston's first super regional win. I think. I'm not sure. Someone may need to correct me on that, but I think it is their first, it's definitely their first time beating the Bluecoats. That's for sure. And yeah, man, I gotta say it. Like they left it all on the field. It was amazing. Like from the beginning to end, like they captured the audience and everyone. I mean, the show, like it just makes you laugh in a good way by just how good it is. If you know what I'm saying. Like, as my favorite moment is whenever they got up close to the front and they played that little brass feature after their opener, and like they played it at like I've talked about this before, but they played at piano and it's just stupid clean. Like it's just amazing. And then they just do this fun choreo and like you're engaged the whole time. It is definitely like after seeing it in person, it is definitely my like from top to bottom, it is my like favorite show just to watch. Like there's just so much going on. It's just amazing. It was unreal. The vibes, everything, boom, like the fans, it was awesome. So it was just a cool sight to see, and I think it's important to know, and to me, it's kind of like beautiful, like that we have a drum corps season where there isn't a definite winner. I feel like that has been the case for a lot of seasons where it's like, wow, this is good, but it's not going to touch this. Oh, this is good, but it's not going to touch this. And I think we haven't had that in a very long time, and it's honestly super refreshing. I just think it's important that we take note of that, and I think it's great that we're going into the rest of the season with kind of an uncertainty for who actually is going to take the gold medal this year, especially because the Boston Crusaders and Bluecoats won't see each other for a long time as of now. So I say a long time, we only have about 2 weeks left of the season, but like in the grand scheme of everything, it's like the gap between San Antonio and the next time they see each other is large. So it's cool not knowing what's going to happen. It's a little nerve-wracking. I know everyone trying to predict it is probably like all over the place, but besides that, let's go ahead and move on to the scores. So yes, the Boston Crusaders won with a 93.213. And the Bluecoats were second with a 92.825, with a gap between them two of 0.388. So, as I go through these scores, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the recap as well, I noticed a couple trends, and that's where this presentation is going to come in hand. it's kind of funny that there's a bunch of islands in these score, like in these scores, and it's just kind of funny to look at. So first, so I've separated it into one, two, three, four, five, 6 islands. These scores, I was able to separate them into 6 islands, and you'll know why here shortly. But yes, so Boston Crusaders and Bluecoats obviously are on their own island here. And I am going to name that island the Champions Island. they're they're on an island more specifically because the Bluecoats were second, and the third was the Santa Clara Vanguard with a 90.913. And the gap between SCV and Bluecoats is 1.912. And using the scale that me and Daniel have been using and he's been using for years, that is a significant amount, and therefore I declare these two, the Bluecoats and the Boston Crusaders, to be on Champions Island because I fully believe that they could swap at any moment. And don't get me wrong, any of these islands, with some exceptions, I believe most of them could swap and it could go any other way any other night. It'll just depend on what the judges think. So yeah, Champions Island, Boston, and Bluecoats. So on to our next island. I think we can kind of guess what's going on here. So we have the Santa Clara Vanguard, third place, with a 90.913. And in fourth place, we had the Blue Devils with a 90.838, and the gap between them two was 0.075. So obviously, this is what I call the Bronze Island. Because, I mean, they're fighting for the 3. Do I think they could switch? Do I think they're going to swap? I don't think so. I think Santa Clara Vanguard, I think that's final. I think they're going to stay above the Blue Devils, but you never know. They still are the Blue Devils. So I could very easily see a scenario where they sneak back up because the gap really isn't that big still. So, you know, we're just going to have to see what happens with that. Next up, the gap between the Blue Devils and the 5th place Phantom Regiment with an 89.263 was 1.575 points. So this is the beginning of a new island, the island that I like to call Oh Yeah Baby Island, named after Carolina Crown. Carolina Crown in 6th place with an 88.788. So the gap between Phantom Regiment and Carolina Crown is 0.475, which is getting real close to that half a point mark, but it's still just under. So do I think there's a scenario where they swap? No. Could they? Maybe. We never know anymore. Stuff happens, you know what I'm saying? So I still think they're on an island here, and you'll know why here shortly. But yeah, I think they're on their island. I don't think the Phantom Regiment is necessarily going to touch the Blue Devils for now, at least in the foreseeable future, and possibly for the rest of the season. I think this is where it's at. I think the Oh Yeah Baby Island makes sense. Home to Phantom Regiment and Carolina Crown as residents there. So next up, we had the 7th place Mandarins with an 87.05, and the gap between the Mandarins and Carolina Crown is 1.738 for this competition. So this next island is what I like to call the the Mandarin's private resorts, because if you notice, the gap between the 8th place Blue Stars, and the Blue Stars had an 85.25. The gap between the Blue Stars and the Mandarins was a 1.8. So obviously, like, this is totally different areas, totally different islands. So once again, the Mandarins, we've been talking about this all year. They are on their own private resort island. Yeah, they're living the luxury life. You know what I'm saying? They got their own private island. They're chilling. They're on the beach. You know what I'm saying? So do I necessarily think that they will stay on this island? I think they will. However, there's going to be some things that I talk about here shortly that maybe they can shorten that gap to Carolina Crown, and maybe in like the best scenario of their life, maybe even beat Carolina Crown. Maybe. But we're not going to go that far. For now, we're just going to talk about maybe shortening the gap and the possibilities of how close they probably could get to the Carolina Crown. So, yeah, that's our top 7. I already mentioned the top 8. We have the 8th place Blue Stars with that 85.25. These next 3 cores are what I call the Chillers Island, because I feel like they're just chilling. In the 8, 9, 10, we have the Blue Stars in 8th. The Cavaliers in ninth with an 84.813. The Troopers in 10th with an 84.6. So these are all pretty close to each other. The Blue Stars a little bit ahead, a little bit more ahead than the Cavaliers are ahead of the Troopers. Um, but yeah, this is the chiller island. Like, they're chilling. They're absolutely staying in finals. Like, they're probably going to end up here in finals somewhere around this spot, at least in my opinion. So yeah, nothing wrong with them. They're just chilling, have a good time. Moving on to 11th place. This next island is called the Good Times Island, which is 11th and 12th place. The 11th place Blue Knights with an 82.963, and the 12th place Colts with an 82.188. And this is a good time island. You know what I'm saying? The gap between 12th and 13th place is 1.45, so that's solidified. It's looking like this is going to be, this top 12 here is most likely going to be our top 12 at finals in Indy. But yeah, this is the Good Times Island. They're 100% in finals. Nobody is really causing any stress to any of them about them not being in finals. So yeah, they're just here. They're just here to have a good time, play some music. So yeah, that concludes the islands as of DCI San Antonio. I could possibly see a couple people breaking out, maybe moving to some islands, taking some flights, maybe for a competition or two. So we'll see how it goes. But moving on to yesterday, we saw our first big championship since San Antonio, the DCI Southeastern Championship, not Southwestern, Southeastern. We saw the Blue Coats win with a 95.025, where they previewed, at least they didn't preview it here, they previewed it before, but the first time I saw it, we saw a new Blue Coats ending. I'm a huge fan. I really like how it's kind of hard to tell on stream, but from what I could hear, I could tell they are still experimenting with all of the ideas they had for their closer. I still think there's more to come. It feels like there's more to come. I know for Changes Everything, like they had something that they waited all the way to Indy to show us. At least if I remember correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, it'd be cool to see what else they do. I mean, maybe even a uniform change. I know that's something they have done sometimes in the past. Could be cool. I mean, they have lots of layers. We never know. Besides that, yeah, they were first with a 95.025. Blue Devils second, decent gap, 92.925. Carolina Crown third, 90.725. Fourth, Blue Stars, 87.425. Fifth, Troopers, 86.75. Sixth, Blue Knights with an 85.3, pretty decent gap. Seventh, Spirit of Atlanta with an 82.275. Eighth, Crossman with a 79.925. Ninth, The Academy with a 78.925. 10th, Music City with a 78.8. 11th, Seattle Cascades with a 75.05. So, moving on to the, there are some things I'd like to talk about in the recap here. It's nothing special. At the end of the day, like, we look at this, it's pretty much everyone's in their own lane. Blue Coats, straight ones. Blue Devils, straight twos, with the exception of performance and general effect. I think they got 1-3 from one judge. Carolina Crown, threes across the board pretty much. They got fourth in rep and general effect 2 from one judge. But Crown also getting as high as second in performance for general effect. But yeah, besides that, everyone's kind of in their own lane. We do see a little bit of fluctuation between the Blue Stars and the Troopers, which is going to pay into what I'm going to talk about here shortly. The Troopers do have higher, like, if we're looking at visual, they do have a higher comp score occasionally. Like, we did see one judge put them higher, which I think could help bridge the gap between the Troopers and the Blue Stars and possibly get them to bump up and get closer to them. We did see the Blue Stars get third in color guard, which was great. They got a 3 in content, 4th in achievement, and 3rd being total, which means they did beat the Carolina Crown in content for color guard. Moving on to brass, we saw Troopers did get higher in content than the Blue Stars, so they have room to grow, and they aren't far behind, so that could help boost their score a little bit in regards to the Blue Stars. But moving on to the music captions, we saw Troopers. Once again, the second brass judge also had them higher in content. So this is definitely could be a concern for the Blue Stars if the Troopers keep stepping their game up. It could possibly make the gap between them shorter, and maybe even Troopers eventually maybe beating the Blue Stars, but probably not. But maybe. Um, we saw pretty much a moving on to music analysis, we saw pretty much a swap between the Blue Devils and Carolina Crown. Blue Devils getting in music analysis threes across the board from both judges, and Carolina Crown getting twos across the board from both judges. So there is room to grow here with Carolina Crown. I mean, we could see them move up. We could see them stay the same. You never know. But then they went right back up to normal with Blue Devils in percussion getting second, and then Carolina Crown 3-4-3. We did see the Troopers once again in content. They were fourth in percussion. So, and Blue Stars were seventh in percussion content. So, I do think there is a scenario where the Troopers can possibly get real close to the Blue Stars if they just keep going. I'm curious how far the gap will be. Same thing as I was talking about with the Mandarins is the Mandarins the past couple shows they have had lots of times where they have beat Carolina Crown in content. So it just begs the question is how far are these drum corps going to go to shorten that gap and possibly even beat that person ahead of them? Do I think there's a scenario where the Troopers beat the Blue Stars? Yes. Do I think it's going to happen? Necessarily, no. But it could. So it's interesting to think about. And that's going to tie into some predictions for Allentown. Moving on to just yesterday, we had NightBEAT, where we saw Blue Coats, Blue Devils, Carolina Crown, Mandarins, Blue Stars, Trooper, Blue Knights, Spirit, Crossman, Music City, Academy, Genesis, Seattle. For time, I'm not going to name the scores, but they are pretty much in their own lane with everything here. Music City and the Academy are probably the closest gap. Music City had a 78.55, Academy 77.95, but other than that, everyone was pretty much in their own lane here. So yeah, back to what I was saying with Mandarins. We're looking at these things. They were, in General Effect 1, they were third. Now, they were barely third. They were third by 0.1, but they were still third. Then moving on, we see General Effect 2, they were fourth by 0.2, Carolina Crown third in rep, once again. So in that content, in quotes. So they're kind of swapping here. There is a scenario where the Mandarins can keep getting closer to the Carolina Crown. Yeah, moving on, like we see in visual proficiency, they were third once again in content to the Carolina Crown, getting straight threes. They even beat them completely in visual proficiency. And then visual analysis, they were third once again, but fourth in achievement. And Carolina Crown was fourth for visual analysis, content in quotes, composition, and then second in achievement. So, man, like this gap, it can get closer. It just depends on how far they are going to necessarily take it. But I don't see a scenario where the Mandarins beat the Carolina Crown because the Crown is still very much ahead. But again, like I was saying, this gap could be shortened just a little bit. Moving on to music for that, we saw the Blue Coats actually get second in content to the Blue Devils getting first, so that's good for them, especially for the Blue Devils, being able to maybe help them get to that third place above Vanguard. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think so, but maybe. Mandarins, once again, they were fifth in content for brass, sixth in achievement, so that definitely set them apart from everybody else, in more specifically Carolina Crown for that. We saw Blue Stars, they were pretty much exactly where they were, but we saw the Troopers get straight fours for brass. They were fourth in brass. So that is interesting. And again, it's going to tie into possibly one of my predictions later in this episode. Moving on to music analysis, we saw Crown actually get second in achievement and get second overall, but they are third in content, so there's still room for people to come up and get them. But for now, they were second at Allentown. Moving on to percussion, nothing crazy here. Bluecoats, they were second in content, but first in achievement. Blue Devils, first in content, third in achievement, and then Crown, third in content, second in achievement. Nothing crazy here. I don't see any of this changing. I don't think the Blue Devils are going to necessarily catch up in percussion to some of these, specifically like the Champions Island and even Vanguard. I don't think, but it is nice to know that they have that first in content, and it is cool, I will say. Looking ahead next to Allentown, I do have some totally accurate predictions. These aren't really that ridiculous. I'm not saying anything that's not like predictable by everybody here. First, I have the Blue Cuts. Second, Blue Devils. 3, the Phantom Regiment. 4th, I do have the Blue Stars. 5th, I have the Troopers, but I think it could be close. Because as I was talking about earlier, we did see a lot of Troopers getting higher in content and a lot of captions. So, Allentown is still a couple of days away. I'm sure they've had a lot of rehearsing. I think the gap between the Troopers and the Blue Stars is going to get closer. I don't think the Troopers will beat the Blue Stars, but I think it'll be close. Other than that, that's pretty much it for controversial, I guess, in quotes. But 5th, I have, or I already said 5th. 6th, I have the Blue Knights. 7th, Colts. 8th, Pacific Crest. 9th, Music City. 10th, Seattle Cascades. And 11th, I'm not sure if, I know the Spartans are transitioning, so I'm not sure if they are world or open for this or whatever, but I'm just going to pretend that they're world class. I have them in 11th. But yeah, that is it for my Allentown totally accurate predictions. That is pretty much it. That is pretty much all I have today. I'm super excited to see how this season turns out, and looking forward to the next couple of shows. So that's it for the recap for this week. Let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts. Send us an email if you want us to react to something or have a controversial opinion, or, you know, all the above. Maybe you just want to, I don't know, talk about something. But yeah, let us know. Thank you for tuning in today, and yeah, have a good one.